Welcome back to the second half of New Jersey Power and Politics. I'm Laura Jones.
And I'm Jim McQueenie.
Deb Howlett is president of New Jersey Policy Perspective, a liberal think tank. She's here now with a very different take than our last guest, Murray Sabrin. In our first half hour, we were talking about the governor's tax cuts, specifically talking about the income tax cuts. And what's wrong with it?
Well, I think the governor's promised to cut income taxes, to fulfill a campaign promise to cut income taxes in the next 2 or 3 years. And the problem is the state lacks revenue to fund essential services. That's why $1 billion has been cut from education. So we've gone from $32 billion budget 3 years ago to a $28 billion budget this year. That's a $5 billion drop.
Well, some people are going to say, well, that's good. We're spending less.
There's only so much less you can spend and still provide the functions that people demand from government. New Jersey has some of the finest schools in the nation, and cutting state support, which is already among the lowest of all the states in the nation, by another 10% is not going to help improve schools. It's just not. And it's not going to lower property taxes. In fact, it's going to drive property taxes up. And the income tax cut will only put pressure on other taxes to pay for that. That's why it's a bad idea.
Professor Sabrin was using an example of businesses over this period have cut proportionally a lot more and survived in this period of this recession. Why can't government do the same? He acknowledges there were cuts in government, but he's also suggesting, why can't you be as tough with cuts, still to go, as business was?
You can be, and I think the state has been. I think, you know, 5% drop, a $5 billion drop in the budget over 3 years has been huge. And you know, there's a lot of talk about income tax being stimulative and tax cuts being the right road to go, but we got into this mess through tax cuts and deregulation. The federal government has had tax cuts for all tax brackets, but mainly for the higher brackets, for the last 10 years. And then it deregulated Wall Street, and that gave us the biggest recession since the Great Depression. So I'm not convinced that, and I don't think anybody should be convinced, that tax cuts and deregulating, as the governor has proposed, is the right path to take.
Depending on who you talk to, what study you look at, some are going to say, hey, listen, especially to the small business owner, you give them a tax cut, and it is going to, they're going to have more money to spend. They'll be able to hire more people, and it has a domino effect.
But the small businesses, that's the trickle-down theory. And that, you know, did it work for Reagan? Not really. What you need to do, the stimulative effect is in spending the money. If you give it to the wealthy earners, the highest income brackets and business, they're not going to go out and spend it. If you give that money to lower brackets, they will go out and spend it. They will go buy an HD TV and contribute to the economy. And you have to remember, 70% of the nation's economy is consumer spending. It's not business hiring, it's not anything else, it's consumer spending.
And driven by psychology, which might be the case of Governor Christie saying at this point, look, we see the signs of the green shoots on the economy now, with the Dow doing what it's doing, job creation, unemployment lagging for sure, but job creation starting to perk up. Maybe this is the time, the governor is saying, exactly the time to put in a tax cut so that the recovery is stimulated more as it's coming out by taxing with people more disposable income.
Well, here's a good question. So the state has lost $5 billion in revenue and made deep and painful cuts to a lot of different programs. And if tax revenues start to replenish themselves and start to come in at a higher rate, what do you start funding first? Do you give tax cuts, or do you repair the damage that's been done to schools? And do you give back some of that $1 billion in state aid that's been cut to schools? That's a great policy discussion to have. It shouldn't be limited to whether there should be tax cuts or not.
Wouldn't even a Democrat, if a Democrat in charge as governor and you work for a Democratic government, wouldn't a Democrat say, let's do whatever it takes to get jobs created, no matter where it goes, and jobs would not necessarily be schools?
Well, I think that jobs are the main objective. And I think what has happened with the federal stimulus money, the ARRA money, and what the previous governor did was all driven at creating jobs. And there's a lag to that, so I think the job creation now is contributing somewhat to the rebound of the economy. I think giving tax breaks to small businesses does not create thousands and thousands of jobs that have been lost. It will slowly drop unemployment a tenth of a point by a tenth of a point, but it won't substantially drop it.
Remember the phrase, every big business was once a small business.
And also, comparatively speaking to New York, Pennsylvania, something we talked about before going on camera, Pennsylvania has that flat tax of 3%, yes. But we are less than New York.
Yes, New Jersey's top rate is 8.97%, which is identical to New York, and all the other rates are lower. New Jersey has 6 different brackets. And if you take into account the exemptions, deductions, all the generous deductions you get to take in New Jersey, you come up with the adjusted gross income, and that's what the tax is based on, that taxable income. And you pay less in New Jersey than you do in Pennsylvania on their flat tax up until about $185,000 of income. That's substantial. Once you get above 85, New Jersey taxes at a heavier rate than Pennsylvania. But a lot of folks think that's appropriate and that's fair because $185,000 of income puts you in the upper brackets.
All right, well, Deb, we're going to have to end it there. Thank you for being on. Good to have you. And we want you to stay with us as we continue here on New Jersey Power and Politics.
Anyone involved in business is going to want to stay tuned. What not to do when it comes to dealing with Trenton. This is New Jersey Power and Politics, only on News 12 New Jersey.